Hi, thanks for watching. This is a map apparently from 1836. Now it's well drawn and there's lots of illustrations, but it's all lies. The illustrations are mostly around the border, which itself is a piece of artwork. And one of the things that drew my attention was this: a female orphan asylum in Bloomingdale. Now we know they just come across a building and give it a name, like a post office or a bank or something. But I thought that was a bit much. And then I found this. And this is a deaf and dumb asylum. In 1836. I mean, that would sleep 100 people. How many deaf and dumb children were in New York back then? We'll get back to the asylums and I'll show you what they say on the map. Now, they say this entire section was fully established, right? Because over in the legend here, it tells you that these areas with the dark lines and the filled in grey parts are sections of the city that's built. And the heavy lines are parts that will be opened or are being regulated, and the light grey lines are avenues and streets established by ordnance. So there's nothing there, and there's nothing there, right? So let me show you this image here. To draw that image, you'd be standing here, because there's the church up at the college, and there's St. Paul's Church, and at the top of Wall Street we've got Trinity Church and the old Lutheran Church beyond that, and that is what's depicted in this drawing down here, right? So we've got the church up at the college, then we've got St. Paul's, then we've got Trinity Church and the old Lutheran Church, and they've even got an American museum, and they founded this in 1810, because that's what they do, they find places and give them a name. So let's look at these churches. This is Trinity Church, and they say built in 1754. And this is the interior of Trinity Church. And this is St. Bartholomew's Church. I mean, look at this place. Unbelievable. Right. And they say St. Bartholomew's was built in 1835. Same time as the map. And this is the interior of St. Paul's. And this is St. Paul's on the outside, and it's 1834. And another view of St. Paul's. Right, but there's more churches than that there. Now here's an older map from 1776, they say. And as for churches, let's see what they've got. Right, Trinity Church, St. George's Church, St. Paul's Church, Garden Street Church, Middle Dutch Church, the North Dutch Church, the Wall Street Church, the Brick Church, the Old Lutheran Church, the New Lutheran Church, the French Church, the German Reformed Church, Moravian Church, Cedar Street Presbyterian Church, the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, 2 meeting halls and a synagogue. Really? With all the power stations in one place, this must have lit up like a Christmas tree at night. So here they've also got the King George's statue next to the Starfort. Right. So something's important to the Americans for this date, 1776. In fact, today is actually the 4th of July. So enjoy your celebrations. And here's a map from 100 years before that. This is in 1674. And the old Lutheran church is here. And this is Bowling Green. And then this is where they put King George's statue. And then after King George's statue, it's called Bowling Green again. And this is the entire Starfort went around this whole section of the island. And because of this wall down here, that's why this is called Wall Street. Right. And this is the American Declaration of Independence from July 4th, 1776. And it's a great idea. Right, we know the motivation for this document, but what was the inspiration? Well, I'll show you. This document, the Declaration of Arbroath. This is from the Scots magazine. Long before the American Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Arbroath made clear the responsibilities of royal rulers. Right, so to get in the spirit, here's one of those famous lines ever written in Scotland. Say it with me. As long as but 100 of us remain alive, never will we on any condition be brought under English rule. Now, a few passages from history are as defiant, stirring and emboldened as this iconic line, which many Scots can still recite on the spot. It's not from Braveheart, but from the Declaration of Arbroath, a diplomatic appeal by the Scots nobility to Pope John the 22nd, signed on the 6th of April, 1320. And the hero of Braveheart, William Wallace, died in 1296. So he never heard the words, never mind, so he wrote them. So, it was sent in dire times indeed, though the army of Edward II had been obliterated at Bannockburn 6 years prior. The odds were still stacked against the Scots. Edward refused to accept Robert Bruce's offer of peace, and the Pope had recently threatened all of Scotland, not just its leaders, but every soul in the nation, with the dreaded judgment of excommunication. Robert Bruce, who had already suffered and lost more than most, can imagine, could stomach this latest blow, but could Scotland itself? Within this context, the famous line quoted above plays second fiddle to what comes next. As rousing as the above line may be, it holds no greater significance than to stir the passions, and the next line, that many scholars now argue, changed the world. But after all, if this prince, King Robert, shall leave those principles which he hath so nobly pursued, and consent that we or our kingdom be subjected to the king or people of England, we will immediately endeavour to expel him as our enemy, and as a subverter of both his own and our rights, and we will choose another king who will defend our liberties. Yes, you read that right. In the year 1320, almost 500 years before the American Declaration of Independence and the French Revolution, the Scots effectively declared that the ruler was only as good as their service to the people. While it's certainly anachronistic to say that it was once of avowed Democrats running around medieval Scotland, it's entirely feasible to argue that the Declaration of Arbroath is one of the most important documents in the history of socio-political discourse. 18 years earlier, William Lamberton, the Bishop of St Andrews, was vexed by the puppet status of the King of Scots, John Balliol. Balliol was but a pawn in English King Edward Longshank's deadly game. The radicalism of the Declaration came out of Lamberton's perceived necessity. He sought out the renowned Scottish philosopher Duns Scotus, who was living in Paris. Scotus argued that a king's true authority comes not from the shiny metal circle on their head, but the blood in their veins, but the consent of the subjects. To an extent, this was a political manoeuvre meant to give weak-willed Balliol the boot and justify Robert Bruce's claim to the throne. To claim that would be later forged through bloodshed rather than philosophy. Still, the impact of this idea continues to reverberate to this day. Influence over the American Declaration? Perhaps. 1/3 of the signatories of the American Declaration of Independence were of Scottish descent. Thomas Jefferson, who drafted it, even shared ancestry with Robert Bruce. Both were descended from Malcolm III of Scotland. Many of the signatories were also educated by Scots, who heralded the Declaration of Arbroath as a sort of surrogate Scottish constitution. Its words proclaimed the sanctity of life and liberty were known to other signatories of Scottish blood, such as Alexander Hamilton and East Lothian native John Witherspoon, so it would be fair to say the Declaration of Arbroath had more than a little influence on forming of the United States. Now, the next time you hear someone use the now cliched phrase that the Scots invented the modern world, you can reply with confidence and the words of the Declaration of Arbroath in your heart, more than you know. And there's a copy of the Declaration, and it is named from the place where it was written. It's never room. Ragtag though it may appear, we have every reason to afford the Declaration of Arbroath at least as much respect and significance as the earlier and much more widely known Magna Carta. Back to asylums. And here's the definition of an asylum and some of the words they use. Haven, refuge, sanctuary, shelter, security, safety, safe house. Let's see how that works out. Remember, these were all built for the purpose they say, although we know they just found them. So the orphan asylums all over Manhattan. There sure were a lot of orphanages in Manhattan in the late 19th century. I counted 20 in King's Handbook of New York City from 1892. Some were founded by non-sectarian organisations, others by religious orders. All sound pretty heartbreaking, but at the time they were progressive institutions where orphans and half-orphans could live, go to school or learn a trade, rather than fall victim to the streets. What's a half-orphan? The Hebrew orphan asylum, this one here, a colossal home on Amsterdam Avenue, 136th Street, and housed 1,000 kids, opened in 1822. And that's just the Hebrew, they've got 1,000 in there, right? It was where Hebrew orphans and indigenous boys and girls are sheltered and educated, stated the book. Right, then we've got the Roman Catholic Orphan Asylum opened this home, this one here, for girls in 1870. It's on Madison Avenue and 51st Street. The boys' building is down the block on 5th Avenue. So, in both boys and girls departments, provision is made for the technical instruction of the inmates. I thought they were orphans. Inmates as we get called in prison. But it's carried out with characteristics of a Catholic Church, not that, to make you pray a lot. There's another one here, St. Joseph's Asylum. And then we have St. Anne's Home for Destitute Children. And it describes it as a large and cheerful edifice with accommodation for nearly 300 inmates. They're no longer orphans. Below is the third incarnation, it's the third one they've built, what they're saying, of the Coloured Orphan Asylum. First opened in 1837. So the orphanage moved to bigger digs on 5th Avenue, so they just name another building an orphanage. Or they reuse them in something else. Before Columbia University, the Bloomingdale Insane Asylum. In the 21st century, it's difficult to picture Morningside Heights with prestigious Columbia University campus, but what most people may not remember is that before the university, 116th and Broadway was home to the Bloomingdale Asylum for mentally ill patients. Right, so I can actually show you that. When it says here, in 1776, the New York Hospital, now known as New York Presbyterian Hospital, opened its doors to take care of 3,000 soldiers fighting in the Revolutionary War. Among the wounded were also mentally ill patients. Throughout the years, the hospital saw a steady rise in these patients. So, in 1802, a committee considered adding a separate wing specifically for the mentally ill. However, in a more radical move, it was decided that it should be a separate and new building to accommodate them. And here it is here. And they say it was opened on June the 1st in 1821. So I can actually show you where that was on the old map. Remember, this is the only place that was completely built. And it shows you that the Deaf and Dumb Asylum was way out here in the sticks. But Bloomingdale, that's way even further away. Where is that again? Give me a minute, this gets confusing. Here you go. This is the Insane Asylum. Right? That's the one that just showed you the photograph. And that was built as an asylum, and they built it way out here. That makes no sense. Now here are some of the buildings that they inherited, and well, they called them asylums for children for a reason, because I think they were used more, well, for warehouses for children, because they had a plan. And these buildings have a couple of things in common, and one of them is that they're all in mud. And the other thing they all have in common is we're told they were all built within a 2-year period. Right, so let's look at this here, the lunatic asylum in Blackwell's Island. Right, now that's a massive structure. So let's see where it was. So this here is Blackwell's Island. And at this end, they've got a penitentiary, which I believe in the future becomes another asylum. And here is the asylum they say they built on Blackwell Island. Now the logistics of building that alone are incredible, and to say you've done it in 2 years, that's a fantastic claim, an unbelievable claim. And I think the same could be said for them all. This is the New York Juvenile Asylum, right? And it was founded in 1851 by a group of prominent businessmen and professionals concerned about vagrancy among poor children in New York City. I'm sure they were right. No ulterior motive at all. And it goes on to say, well, pretty much workhouses. And the New York Juvenile Asylum and the reformatory for truant and disobedient children of both sexes, residents of the city between the age of 7 and 14 years, committed by a magistrate or surrendered by parents or guardians. It also provides homes in the country for friendless or surrendered children. It can accommodate 800 at the asylum and 100 at the house of reception. Right, like I say, a factory for children. And there's another image of the same place. And this is the destination. An estimated 6,000 children were sent west from the juvenile asylum between September 1854 and 1923, placing in the top 4 for the number of children sent of those institutions credited for taking part in America's orphan train movement. Should they call it an orphan train movement now? Right, so you can read that at your leisure. And there's so much about these places that's unbelievable. So they actually say that they gave the children money for their work. Another lie. From sanctuary to snake pit, the rise and fall of asylums. Most people associate the word asylum with squalor and brutality, an impression strengthened by portrayals in books and films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But they were originally designed to be places of sanctuary. Christopher Payne visited and photographed 70 such institutions across the USA for his book Asylum, Inside the Closed World of State Mental Hospitals, which documents how their fall from grace reflects changing attitudes to mental illness. Really? Mental institutions have a bad reputation. Many people think of them as little more than prisons for the insane. The populations of violent or stupefied patients forcibly confined to dismal wards ruled over by tyrannical matrons. There's some truth in that. This picture shows Matchawayne State Hospital in Beacon, New York, which is now Fishkill Correctional Facility. So I wonder if the wire fence has always been there. And these are straitjackets. I'm guessing they're colour coded for different reasons. And this place is insane. Then they say, but asylums started out as a philanthropic dreams rather than psychiatric nightmares. The concept was born in the mid-1800s when socially minded citizens, dismayed by the often dismal lot of the mentally unstable, paid for dozens of institutions to be constructed for their care. By 1880, 139 had been built in the US, and that's how they explain 139 buildings in mud. They were often palatial buildings designed by prestigious architects. with vast landscapes, grounds and impressive vistas. They were symbols of civic pride, just as museums and universities are today, and some became fixtures on the tourist trail. This vintage postcard shows part of the extensive gardens of Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts, and that's what that'll be there. And you know why they refer to it as a snake pit? Well, if you consider when you get put in, they put you in Ward 10, and your objective before you can be released is to achieve Ward 1. Then you can see the gardens and the gate and the way out. But what happens is, just like a game of snakes and ladders, if you go from Ward 10 and you finally reach Ward 1, if some matron does not like you, then all they have to do is make you shout and bawl. And guess where you'll end up? Back in Ward 10. And you go through it all again. Well, thanks for watching. Please comment.